Wuxi is also a cultural gem with a storied heritage and abundant artistic legacies harmonized with modern civilization. Discover Wuxi with Rising Star Cities, only on CGTN.
Good morning. Welcome to CGTN Rising Star Cities. Allow me to firstly introduce to you about us. You might have heard about it, that we are asking for your support, but actually it's an all-around coverage platform. And we have an English name, Rising Star Cities. We are oriented to audience around the world to show the most vibrant cities in China. Today we are coming to Wuxi. If you search the economic news about Wuxi, the first one coming up may be headlined, for 4 years in a row, Wuxi ranks top in terms of per capita GDP among the mid-sized and large cities. So you must be curious about the secrets of its economy. We would love to decode it. CGTN has sent dozens of people here in Wuxi. We've been here for weeks. We tour around the villages, factories, labs, neighborhoods, the beaches, and the mud and clay models. So we did our best to showcase the history, the present day, and the future of Wuxi. When we talk about it among us, asking each other about the Wuxi in our eyes, I think the character about Wuxi is that compared to those emerging cities that grow overnight, it's different. And also, it's completely different from the popular cities. I think the difference comes from the cultural background of the city, with about thousands of years of history and boast numerous intangible cultural heritages. So I have an interaction with our audience. If you are a local in Wuxi, could you raise up your hand? I think less than half, by a rough estimate. That is actually consistent with what we have talked about before we start this game. Many people are called the new Wuxi locals. They choose to settle down here in Wuxi for a new life. So what attracts you here? Maybe today, listening to our experts, you could start thinking about that question. And after the lecture, we will leave some time for Q&A. And a brief introduction of our experts, the Dean of the School of Business of Jiangnan University. Mr. Pu, you are lucky. If you want to listen to him, you need to be admitted by the university in the past, but today we invited him here. There will be about sufficient time for Mr. Pu to introduce to us about the Wuxi from his perspective. But his wife is a new local here, and his child can listen to the local dialect but may not be able to speak it, just like tens of thousands of other kids in the city. So Professor Pu will bring us his unique perspective of Wuxi. Now let's give a big hand to Professor Pu Xujin. First of all, I would love to thank the Rising Cities invitation. As has been said, I am a native here. After graduating from high school, I studied elsewhere. I have taken about 12 years of my life studying elsewhere in China and abroad. And then I came back to Jiangnan University to serve as a teacher, and now I am a dean of the business school. Just then, our moderator has shared with everyone about some specific phenomena of Wuxi, for example, the peaches, the per capita GDP ranking among the top for 4 years consecutively. So those are the shining name cards of Wuxi. So how did we make it here? As you know, in history, Wuxi has never been a political center before. From the emperor of Han Dynasty that Wuxi County was established, only in the first 3 to 4 years of the 1950s had Wuxi become the residence of the province capital. But since then, Wuxi belonged to Suzhou or Changzhou. We have never been a political hub. As you see, now our municipal party secretary is not a member of the provincial party committee. So, by that it means Wuxi's development never relied on policies or the national positioning. What do we have today? I have to highlight our profound culture. This is my title today: The Urban Development of Wuxi from the Cultural and Economic Perspectives. Now, a new word is taking shape. We call it the cultural economy. Last year, during the 2 sessions, President Xi Jinping mentioned about this word when meeting the Jiangsu delegation. According to him, the culturally developed places could also accommodate high economic development. So you could study about the cultural economics. And he also mentioned that we have paradise that is comparable to Suzhou. So I think if we look further, Wuxi is more worth our study. As I said, it has no political stance and it has no resource endowments. But in the past 1 century, Wuxi's economy has been leading the way in China. There must be something about it. Whenever the young teachers settled in Wuxi, I told them that for the small wild flowers, they may be very tiny and nothing to compare with peony, but it can also blossom just like peony. And Wuxi City has become the top 10 most dynamic cities in China and the top 10 most satisfactory cities by the foreign investors. And also it's the best city with talent introduction and the most livable city in the Chinese mainland. And in terms of the business environment, it has the highest level of reputation with the most promising workforce. So, with all of those honors and awards, what are the stories about Wuxi? So that among so many star cities in the Yangtze River Delta area, Wuxi can stand out and be awarded, exemplified by the top one in terms of per capita GDP. Maybe we could start from its history. Wuxi is traditionally a famous city for its industry and commerce. Speaking of a traditional culture, there have been many stories about it. For example, Wuxi TV used to have a TV series broadcasted. It's called Talking About Wu, so Wuxi can represent Wu culture and the southern China culture. There are many cities following Wu culture, such as Suzhou, Changzhou. If speaking of the southern China culture, for example, in southern Jiangsu and northern Zhejiang province, there are so many cities falling in that category. Basically, all the cities in the downstream of Yangtze River could be included into that category. So those are not typical of Wuxi. But I want to highlight the culture of water in Wuxi. Wuxi stands out because of two waterways. The first one is the Beijing-Hangzhou Canal, which connects Beijing and Hangzhou. It passes through many cities, but Wuxi is the only one city that has the canal going through the downtown area. You can sail on the canal to appreciate the residents of southern China style. And also by the two sides of the canal, there are many settlements of industries. For example, the flour factory. They are sporadically lying on the two banks of the canal. For the development of a cluster of cities, usually it is highly related to a waterway. The Paris Olympics is about to begin. The industry of Paris has been separated on the two banks of the river of Seine. And if you look at the other countries like Hungary, they also have a big river leading to the Black Sea. So usually the well-developed industries reside by the river. In Hungary, not long ago, Budapest is actually the name of two cities. And on each bank of the river, the two cities reside there individually. So, for Wuxi, the big canal brings us vitality. This is a map of Wuxi before 1950. There is a straight river and 9 other branches trespassing this ancient city. The Zhongshan Road used to be a river, and Wuxi City is shaped like the back of a turtle. After the establishment of New China, because of economic pursuits, we have filled some of the rivers to build roads. But the canal and other waterways constitute as the dynamic cultural background of Wuxi. In addition, we have a static lake. It's a serene lake. It's called Tai Lake. When I was little, I thought that Taihu Lake was an inland lake, but then I realized it's not true. Actually, the majority of Tai Lake is in Suzhou and Huzhou cities. We have eaten the Taihu Lake cakes, cookies, and enjoyed the Taihu branded products like the fans or the beer. Even there was such a television program called Taihu Lake TV program. So we naturally thought Taihu belonged to Wuxi. It's not real, but at least Wuxi is the closest city to Taihu Lake. Many entrepreneurs started up their business by utilizing the canal. They have accumulated wealth. They built up the villas and gardens by Taihu Lake. The Ningyuan Garden and the Li Garden were invested by those entrepreneurs. They have benefited not only themselves, but also the locals. So by the Taihu Lake, you can find a lot more such gardens, which have become the tourist spots for Wuxi people to have some recreational activities or take leisure time. When Jiangnan University was established, one of our sites was very pretty. It was close to the lake. But now, the old site has become the Taihu restaurant for the politicians to receive guests. So, inclusiveness is our feature. There was a stone tablet in front of the restaurant explaining about the Taihu Lake history and the inclusiveness of entrepreneurs in Wuxi, which is ingrained in their DNA. Because of the canal and the lake, the culture of water took shape in Wuxi. Another important culture characteristic is about the commercial culture. From 1895, the first chimney was established by Jiangnan brothers in his factory. 1895 was the first year when we failed and lost the battlefield. We signed Ma Guan Agreement and lost a lot of money. Since then, many incited people were aware that we must save the nation with the real economy. So the first factory called Yeqing factory was established. Since then, Xue Fuchen and his son Xue Nanming and also Rong Zongjing, Rong Desheng brothers, and the towns started up their businesses. Ever since the first wave of factories in 1895 emerged, those entrepreneurs set up these ethnic industrial bases. Some of these companies have sustained till now. They have become representatives of the BRI initiative. So it's an inheritance from traditional ethnic commerce. We have many pillar industries like the cotton, textile industry, flower industry. And on that basis, financial service, transportation, service industry, and educational industry was supported, including my university. And our industry and commerce lasted long. Many of the spirits burgeoned. Premier Li Qiang used to say that the spirit originated from Wenzhou. The spirit is about enduring tens of thousands of difficulties and embarking on tens of thousands of mountains and rivers. So, the 4,000 and 40,000 spirit is exhibited in our training base of entrepreneurs. So the culture of industry and commerce was born in Wuxi, and there are reasons for that. First, Wuxi has favorable transportation condition. As I mentioned, before railway came to the picture, rivers and canal were important transportation modes, and that transportation choice was cheap and insusceptible to the weather impacts. In addition to the canal, Wuxi benefited from the railway development as well. Many Wuxi people did their business in Shanghai, and then they came back to Wuxi to start up their own business. It was very commonplace. But during the fight against the Japanese invaders occupied Wuxi. These industrial representatives came to Shanghai to preserve their industry. Those entrepreneurs, when making money, would ask their descendants to be well educated. And according to their family tradition, education is the top priority, no matter how wealthy you are. Besides, Wuxi boasts profound business culture background. We are influenced by Confucianism, but Confucianism in Wuxi is different from northern China. We don't champion just reading books to get everything from it, or just to serve officialdom as the final purpose of reading. Instead, we believe that different positions or different types of jobs are the same. For example, serving as a politician or a businessman, it's equal. We don't discriminate against the businessman. It never happened that way. As the moderator said, my wife was a northerner. When she talked with her friend, they said that it seemed like all your friends are business people. Some are very well-educated people from the famous universities. Why don't they serve as the civil servants, but they all dive into the business world to do something of their own? And we think that's because of the business culture here. We don't think that doing business is something to shy away from. Instead, we feel proud of our business. So, that cultural background took shape in the past 100 to 200 years. Fourth, the entrepreneurs in Wuxi have strong patriotism. Once they made money, they would return to the nation. They never squander their wealth. They may build their schools or roads. Now there is a road called Kaiyuan Road. It was the first road connecting the countryside with the downtown area. The old Changqiao Bridge was a gift to Mr. Rong during his birthday. During the fight against the Japanese invaders, Mr. Tang was controlled by the Japanese, and he was then invited to lead the Business Council of Japan, but he refused. And then, in the War of Liberation, maybe at the time of February of 1949, Rong De-chen took a horse carriage, and tour around the square. So many people see that Mr. Rong stayed here. There must be no problem And many people stay with Wuxi City as well instead of escaping to Taiwan. So that's a showcase of patriotism of the entrepreneurs. And what is the essence of our commercial culture? The first one is take the initiative to be open-minded and inclusive, and secondly, be daring to reform and innovate, and finally, be pragmatic and set up our brand so as to sustain our business. If you read into the past 1 century history of Wuxi business, you may find some examples of like BOD or free lunch to the workers, the team building activities, or other bonuses to the workers were already there. Those entrepreneurs kept learning and innovating. Such business culture may be felt in the relics of the factories, but instead, they are also ingrained in the DNA of the young generations. With that business culture, we can support the local economic development. Next, let's turn to modern culture and its influence over Wuxi's economy. As has been said, General Secretary Xi proposed the concept of cultural economics. He wrote a book about Zhejiang. It's called Zhijiang Xinyu. In it, he wrote, economic development couldn't become a one-way thing. That is to say, economic development is not solely for the purpose of money or capital. That's a tragedy. So for one thing, we don't want to be eroded by capital. Of course, idyllic philosophy is not what we support. Some people are now hyping about countryside with very pure and simple customs. And if you have children, you must have read a famous classic called The Warden Lake. I don't think high of that kind of lifestyle, which is to leave the masses and lead a very lonely life by yourself. I think that kind of lifestyle only happens in our imagination. Some of my friends used to say that he wants to buy a house, an apartment in the border of China and Vietnam. I asked him, what if you get sick? For men to live in our society, we need both economy and culture. We don't want to be kidnapped by capital, but we don't also want to live a very lonely life in nature. We hope to enjoy both material civilization and also intellectual civilization. Now, when we are trying to integrate both civilizations as proposed by General Secretary Xi, that is a good example of cultural economics. According to this concept, culture could be the key driver of our economy, and it highlights the role of culture to economy, and it reveals the integration of materials and intellect, culture and economy, tradition and modernity, culture and technologies, cultural value and production targets. So in this new era, Wuxi has made two efforts. First, we must have some cultural products. Second, we hope to integrate culture with economy. As you can see, a decade ago, I checked the itinerary of the traveling agencies in southern China. Whenever the traveling agencies were planning about the tour in southern China, Wuxi is just like a short stop or even neglected completely. Why? Wuxi lagged behind in terms of culture. And also when compared to the famous cities in southern China, Wuxi lost its glamour. But if you move Wuxi to the other regions, we could certainly be a highlight. But in our surroundings, Nanjing, Suzhou, Hangzhou, Shaoxing, and other southern cities in China, they have very high quality cultural products. In the previous decade, we started to focus on culture, and now we have taken several measures. For example, we have established 18 provincial-level cultural industrial parks with about 1,000 cultural enterprises above designated size, and also we have created 8 prioritized cultural industries, and last year there was an increment of 65 billion RMB yuan in the cultural industry. So Wuxi is aware of the relationship between culture and economy. They can never be separated. Instead, they are highly integrated. In particular, we have some projects. The first one is called Taiyuan Project. Wuxi is now compiling the history of Wuxi with 20 volumes. We know that we were not the early starter. Changzhou had it already, long before. But it was a loophole in Wuxi. As entrusted by Wuxi municipal government, our university undertook this job. We also promote the inheritance of intangible cultural heritage. Now, Wuxi owns 361 different such intangible cultural heritage projects, which are typical of Wuxi. We also hold cultural and sports activities. For example, Wuxi Marathon. Especially the marathon was organized during the season of the cherry blossoms. It was also a good opportunity for our university to brand ourselves. On CCTV 5 channel, there was the coverage of Wuxi Marathon because the marathon goes through the university. The majority of our campus was shot in the camera. All of those activities are proof of our attention to culture. Second, putting in place a coordination mechanism between culture and economy and set up new model of organic regeneration of cities. There are many cultural spaces in Wuxi, including today's art gallery. It's also a cultural place. Recently, the Red Boat Shipyard is a good example. To give you some other examples, like the orchestra, concert hall, the cultural and artistic center, Wuxi Art Gallery. So from 5 different dimensions, we are trying to preserve the famous people's residence, the historical sites, the famous villages and zones. On behalf of my university, I attended Wuxi Township creation. In the modern economics, Sun Yefang and Xue Muqiao are very famous economists, and they both were born in Wuxi Township. They are actually related. So, we aim to create Wuxi into a good example of modern economics. And the old residents of the two economists were still in Wuxi Township. There may be more such projects in the future. Zhou Xinli is the historical site because of a famous person called Zhou Shunqing. It's an old residence of Zhou Shunqing. If you have noticed, in recent years, we've spared no effort to create such cultural space. In addition to the cultural-related projects, we have also tried to foster an overall cultural economics concept so as to pursue high-quality development. For example, on the bottom left corner, that's the cherry blossom economy. It's one of the top three appreciation sites of cherry blossoms. In addition to Kyoto and Washington, Wuxi followed. Around the Dragon Boat Festival, the number of visitors to appreciate cherry blossoms has contributed greatly to the popularity of Wuxi City and our GDP. We also have a marathon economy. Some are running in Yixing or Jiangnan. Some are marathon, some are half marathon. Such activities are held all the year. We also have the nightlife economy. We didn't have nightlife before. In the early 21st century, my then girlfriend had an appointment with me, but at 6:00 p.m., the streets are all dark. She asked me, why did people go to sleep at 6:00? I said, the locals didn't have any recreational activities or nightlife. So the nightlife economy developed gradually. It's a natural thing. We don't have to push it hard. If the locals prefer to play outside, they could enjoy themselves. But for others who may need to get up early the next morning to go to work, just let them be at home. In front of the middle schools, there was a big gathering of parents picking up their children. And because of the fierce competition of Gaokao, we couldn't develop the nightlife economy before. We also have some intangible cultural heritages projects. Finally, the focal point of our culture and economy is talent. During the third plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee, President Xi mentioned that economy is not the ultimate goal. It's a tool. In the end, we hope our people could live a happy life. We could meet their rising demand for culture and economy. In the past years, Wuxi has taken many innovative steps in attracting talents. They are shown not just in mechanisms or policies, but also in many details. For example, the Wetland Park, Shangxian Tower, and Shangxian named primary school. And speaking of Shangxian, it means respecting talents. In many districts of Wuxi, many of those places are named after Shangxian. That is our cultural brand. And it's also a testament that Wuxi is grounded with profound cultural background. Yesterday, in my school, a doctor came here to register. I asked, "Do you want to book our dorm?" He said, "I've already rented an apartment." I said, "When I came here, we just lived in a dorm, but how dare you rent an apartment with 2 bedrooms instantly?" And according to him, for the doctors who came to Wuxi every year, they could enjoy 20,000 RMB yuan of subsidy to rent a house, added by another 500 by the house. They don't need to live in the dorm. I was shocked. If I was born 10 to 20 years later, I could enjoy same policies. Previously, for the talents settling in Wuxi, we had nothing. But now, respecting and cherishing the talents has become the overall background. And in recent 2 years, we have some very competitive policies about talents. For example, in 2023, an opinion on deepening the implementation of talents-supported city development in this new era was promulgated. In terms of resource distribution, environment, quality improvement, and the talents building, we have taken 5 actions. We have another plan called the Taihu Lake Talent Campaign. It requires a heavy investment. And we also have another project including 12 different items to attract talents, including the excellent college graduates. So we have emerged from 1.0 to 7.0 version in terms of talent policy. Take my university as a good example. About less than 30% of our graduates are retained in Wuxi's job market. But years ago, that ratio was only 10%. Now 27 to 28% of our graduates settled down in Wuxi to become the new Wuxi locals. In Zhejiang University, that ratio is 40%. There is a gap between my school and others. So we aim to retain more talents in Wuxi. Not just policies, we have high-level platforms, including like Taihu Lake Talent Summit, inviting 44 academicians to attend, and 222 agreements were signed during the summit. We also hold some entrepreneurship contests like Taihu Cup. This year, we had another session in France and Germany. We targeted at those talents coming from France and Germany. Together with the Hong Kong Polytech University, we are working together to set up a digital technology center in Wuxi. And also, the Wuxi Innovation Center was put in place in Belgium. It serves as a bridge between us and the EU. One of the provinces in Belgium is a sister province of Jiangsu province, and this October, a batch of enterprises from Belgium will visit Wuxi to search for business opportunities. That province is called Silicon Valley in Europe. Many big transnational companies were there. But now, due to the political reasons, our partnership with the USA has been hampered, but our partnership with EU is still strengthened. We are also trying to hire the high-level talents from elsewhere with the help of intermediaries. Third, optimizing the talents service system. If you look at the data, for the newly introduced talent team, we offer like 100 million RMB yuan support. The academician Ding Han took his team here. We offered him dozens of billions support. And we helped him to plant a peach tree. Peach tree is not expensive, but it has deep intonations. So attracting talents is not just about earmarking capital support. They may be offered bigger sum. Culture may play a bigger role. And for the leading talents introduced, we offer 10 million capital support. For the innovative talents, we offer 5 million capital support. For the doctors admitted by my university, the majority of them were graduated from the very top universities. We can support them to apply for the entrepreneurship project with an annual sum of 200,000 RMB yuan financial support. So we have greatly optimized the service system for the talents with very good feedback. We also cover like subsidies of apartment, healthcare, and their children's education. We tried very hard to retain them, so the talents once choosing Wuxi would fall in love with Wuxi. We racked our brains to come up with new policies. Finally, the most important thing about talent support is the youngsters. How do we appeal to the youngsters? Last year, as entrusted by NDRC, we undertook a research topic themed under improving retainment ratio in Wuxi. We interviewed many young people. According to them, they don't think Wuxi is a fashionable city. We delivered this report to the municipal people's government, and the leaders commented that we must do whatever we can to create those appealing industries to the youngsters. As you know, one big feature of our industries is that we are mostly to-B business. We are like the middle part of the industrial chain. The big factories like the parts manufacturers, the high-end equipment manufacturers, but we don't own our brands. That's why, in the future, we highly recommend more policies to come out for Wuxi's industries to carry the youngsters. And there may be some premium experience to learn from. Many cities in China are resorting to different methods to appeal to youngsters. Take Luoyang as an example. Before, Luoyang was more heavier than Wuxi in terms of industry. But in history, Luoyang had enjoyed many legends. For example, because of the poem Luo Chengfu, or the story of Emperor Wu Zetian preferring to live in Luoyang. So they dig into those cultural elements to relive those cultural stories. Now many youngsters prefer to put on the Han costume and take photos in Luoyang. The once old city is turned into a new dynamic city. We hope to build Wuxi into a favorable city by young people, and the young people care about lifestyle. They hope to make money here. They hope to have good education for their children, livable environment, so lifestyle and attitude of their life matter. We do hope that in the future, the cultivation and attraction of talents could pivot more towards these fields. We must introduce more interesting policies. For example, in Binghu district, there are a stadium, wetland park, and others. Those sites are distributed sporadically. They are not organized. Instead, we could learn from the USA to connect those different sites, so they could constitute as a grand community. People could cycle, could row the boat, all together within these parameters. So, we hope to create such a big space for youngsters to live their life. The final point I want to make is, during the third plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee is concluded, and China's modernization is already on a new journey. The ancient civilization and the big population could also characterize our Chinese style of modernization. But most importantly, Chinese modernization is a combination of material civilization and intellectual civilization. Today, Wuxi could be said as a template for the other cities to learn from, but we are not perfect. We still have room of improvement. On our journey of Chinese modernization, Wuxi must perform better. As a native in Wuxi, I do hope that Wuxi could accumulate more premium experience and more cases for the other cities to learn from. And I call upon more youngsters both in Wuxi and elsewhere to fall in love with Wuxi. Thank you, Mr. Pu. I could see that the time is not enough for you to share. With your introduction, we have better understanding about why Wuxi is a good example of integrated development of material civilization and intellectual civilization. You touched upon the history, the cultural, economics, and finally talents. With the countless talents supportive policies, we could certainly attract more youngsters like those with us today. And now we would love to receive several questions in the remaining time. If you do have questions, please raise up your hand. Good morning. I work and live in Xishan. It's a garden area. We hope culture could empower economy. In our district, we have about 400 printing and packaging enterprises. They have become the mainstay of our cultural industry. But now, under the circumstance of digitalization and economic globalization, how to have quick upgrading of those traditional enterprises in order to keep pace with the times. Digital empowerment may help the traditional cultural enterprises. So what are the actual measures would you recommend? Thank you. I also lived in Xishan. I know that the colorful printing industry is well developed, but it is a traditional industry. Digital transformation is a buzzword, but to be honest, to what extent could digitalization bring to these traditional industries? It's still controversial. We cannot calculate the exact numbers, including during our survey in Shuangliang. We inspected some big enterprises. They have quick digital transformation, but between the investment and output, is there real value added by digitalization? It's still a controversial question. But of course, we know it's only inevitable to transform digitally. For packaging and colorful printing industries, which used to be labor-intensive industries or even polluting industries. To me, I think a digital transformation is a stage-by-stage thing. It happens gradually. I recommend to start from the bottom layer digitalization. For example, paperless office work, information system building, to break the information silo trap, and then we can replicate such examples. Because only when the executives find the benefits of digital transformation can they support the large-scale digitalization. And finally, under the circumstance of economic downturn, I don't support absolute digitalization for digitalization's sake, or even to resort to the higher leverage ratio. Thank you. I think we can allow for the last one question. Thank you. When I was listening to your speech, I was attracted by your second part. You mentioned that your university has a Taiyuan project. So my question is, could you detailize on what are the most promising cultural industries? And when we are doing the cultural project, how can we create more job opportunities? Taiyuan project is about the compilation of Wuxi history. There might be 20 volumes categorized according to the figures. Not just our university, Nanjing and Zhejiang University professors participated in this project. Wuxi archive experts were also involved. So it's an ongoing project. Maybe in the next 2 years, we would publish this book. My personal opinion is the cultural industry doesn't involve the citizens a lot. It's mostly encouraged by the government. For example, the intangible cultural heritage, especially the dark red enameled pottery. How is it made? Can I be part of the making process? Can we invite the visitors to make one? Can we create some creative product of the teapot? We kind of lag behind compared to other cities. For example, in Chaoshan, the head paint flowers are very popular. Many visitors are flooding there to take photos with the head-painted flowers, but we don't see so many visitors coming to Wuxi to make such a clay teapot. So we are just exhibiting our products or send them as gifts, but not very interactive with the visitors. We are not digging to the deep layer. If we can connect those intangible cultural heritage with the industries more, and then we can create more job opportunities. Thank you, Professor Pu. Today, with your speech, I could see that you've done a lot of homework. You've prepared for long with a lot of information, and when you answer the questions, you speak out of your heart. And as a native in Wuxi, Mr. Pu do hope that his hometown could develop better. And with your introduction, we now know, as I said in the beginning, Wuxi is not a fast-growing city. Instead, it's an inclusive and steady city. Just like your name indicates, Pu Xujin. Xujin means slowly walking. So we hope that Wuxi could develop steadily and better. And for your information, Nianhuawan also have the head-painted flower experience. We invite you there. Thank you again, Mr. Pu. And I would also love to thank every audience, and please stay tuned with our Rising Star Cities from CGTN. We will bring you more excellent